Texas 18th Congressional District. We'll discuss this win and more of today's top headlines. I'm Ernie Manous.
And I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman. We'll also be joined by Pastor DZ Cofield, who will discuss Black History Month and tell us about the charity Hope for Families, a nonprofit focused on supporting urban communities.
And I'm Frank Billingsley. Plus, we'll also chat with Maureen Patton, Executive Director of the Grand 1894 Opera House in Galveston.
And as always, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or text 713-440-8870. Or you can email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube. Simply go to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Kristen Wright. The federal government remains in a partial shutdown. Lawmakers disagree on several fronts, especially immigration enforcement operations. NPR's Luke Garrett reports the Senate approved a measure to fund the Department of Homeland Security only through February 13th, as lawmakers try to come up with an agreement on policies for ICE.
Speaker Johnson told Fox News he and Trump support some changes to DHS.
For example, we want body cameras on immigration and customs enforcement agents.
But Johnson made clear the GOP won't budge on issues of DHS agents hiding their identities with masks, citing officer safety. This doesn't line up with the changes Democrats want.
Speaker Johnson says the earliest the House may vote is tomorrow. Some employees of key agencies like the Pentagon, the Departments of Education and Labor are either furloughed or working without pay. President Trump is sending mixed signals on his plans for Iran. This raises the possibility of either a military strike or negotiations. Meanwhile, Iran's leader is warning a U.S. attack could ignite a wider Middle East war. NPR's Greg Myrie reports.
The U.S. buildup in the region includes an aircraft carrier, multiple additional ships, and dozens of warplanes. President Trump describes the force as an armada and says the strike would be much more forceful than the U.S. attack on Iran's nuclear facilities last June. Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, spoke Sunday saying, quote, "The Americans should know if they start a war, this time it will be a regional war. Iran was hard hit last summer, but still has missiles capable of striking U.S. and Israeli targets in the region." Trump also says Iran wants a deal to avoid a conflict, but so far, no negotiations have been announced. Greg Myrie, NPR News, Washington.
The Walt Disney Company reported better than expected quarterly results. NPR's Scott Horsley reports the entertainment company is drawing fans to both movie theaters and theme parks.
Disney's movie studio did a strong box office business thanks to hits like Zootopia 2 and the latest Avatar movie. The company's theme parks and cruise ship division reported record revenue, although Disney warned international visits to its theme parks in California and Florida could suffer in the current quarter. Economists are praising President Trump's latest pick to head the agency that tracks inflation and unemployment. Brett Matsumoto is described as a technocratic data nerd. Trump fired the agency's previous leader last August after a disappointing jobs report. An earlier nominee withdrew after criticism that he was overly partisan and lacked experience. Scott Horsley, NPR News, Washington.
A series of small earthquakes rattled the San Francisco Bay Area today. The most powerful was a magnitude 4.2. The area's had a lot of seismic activity recently. This is NPR News from Washington.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Tom Perumian. An altercation between two students at Grand Oaks High School in Conroe resulted in one of the students being stabbed. Montgomery County sheriffs responded, and a suspect is now in custody. The victim was taken to a hospital. More details as they become available. Former Harris County Attorney Christian Menefee won a lopsided victory over his fellow Democrat, former Houston City Council member Amanda Edwards, in Saturday's special election runoff to fill out the term of the late Congressman Sylvester Turner. Edwards has not responded to a request for comment from Houston Public Media. Menefee will now face 9th District incumbent Congressman Al Green in the March Democratic primary. A long-standing effort to crack down on apartment complexes with chronic health and safety problems continues to face delays at Houston City Hall. Mayor John Whitmire said last year he hoped to move an apartment inspection ordinance forward in January, but progress remains stalled. City officials tell Houston Public Media the rules will be discussed in a series of upcoming community meetings. Julia Orduña is a tenant advocacy group, is with tenant advocacy group Texas Housers, one of the leading proponents of the measure.
I do hope that this is thought of as important and moved with that urgency as well, because the longer that we sit on this, the longer that tenants are living in that precarity.
Those community meetings have yet to be scheduled. In sports, the Rockets beat the Dallas Mavericks Saturday, 111-107. The Rockets are on their way home. Tomorrow night, they face the Boston Celtics. Tip-off at 7 p.m. Checking your weather, partly sunny and windy today with a high of 70. Mostly cloudy and windy tonight. We'll see a low around 57. Showers and thunderstorms likely on Tuesday, a high near 72 degrees. Right now, mostly sunny, 59 degrees on the UH campus. I'm Tom Perumian. News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive. Progressive Commercial Auto Insurance protects the vehicles that work to keep small businesses moving forward, including protection while running errands and other tasks. At progressivecommercial.com.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Hello there. We are back. America's long nightmare is over.
What do you mean?
I got my hair cut.
Oh, Lord.
Thanks for tuning in to Hello Houston. Today is February 2nd. We are moving right along into 2026.
Groundhog Day.
So,
did you see your shadow this morning, Frank?
The Groundhog did, which means 6 more weeks of winter. Now, Punxsutawney Phil's only about 30% right.
Yeah, I was seeing that today. There are other animals that predict the weather that have a better rate of prediction.
Yeah, there's a nutria in Louisiana. I think we have a longhorn somewhere in Texas that does it.
Right.
And, of course, Kevin, my husband's birthday, Kevin Gilliard, his birthday is today. He saw his shadow, so 6 more weeks of shopping. That's how it works in our
Is that
household.
how it works?
Yes.
But what can you tell us actually about the weather? Or is this the most accurate report we're going to get?
It's gorgeous out there. Look at that shot. If you're watching us on YouTube, you can see the city is just brilliant. It's nice and cool. It's going to continue to warm up a little bit the next couple of days. And then another front tomorrow will kibosh that to get us back down to cool. And then we warm up toward the weekend. So tomorrow's really the only chance of rain this week. But it's 70% in the afternoon and the evening as this front comes through. So that will bring us back down Wednesday, a little cool snap. Nothing freezing.
Yeah,
but
if you're
60s, 40s. And then by the time we get to Saturday, Sunday, we're 70s and 50s for highs and lows.
There were some rumors on social media that Houston was going to get snow this weekend.
Oh, great. Let's see it.
Yeah, right.
We want to make
this
a bet?
past weekend or the weekend coming up?
This coming weekend that there was going to be snow this weekend. And I saw multiple meteorologists basically say that is not happening.
Right. Well, there was a long-term model like a week ago that suggested that in one run. But it's
if it's getting up to the 70s.
Well, we call those people on social media meteorologists. That's our name for them.
They want all the hype. They want the clicks. They want all of the
and they'll say anything to get attention.
Yeah.
And you know, every now and then, even a blind pig finds an apple.
A stopped clock is right twice a day.
Twice a day.
That's my favorite one. We were sitting in here looking at, if you're watching us on YouTube, you can see our sky shot of downtown. And Frank and I were commenting on, it almost looks too perfect. It almost looks like it's a drawing or color enhanced, but it's what you're seeing out there.
Beautiful.
Our city has gone AI.
Yeah. that couldn't hurt.
I know, right?
And also, with the beginning of February, it is Black History Month has begun. We're going to be taking a look at that and talking about Black History Month and a charity that's really helping families in our community. And it's also Heart Health Month. So we're going to be talking about having a healthy heart.
Yeah,
yes.
There's a lot of galas for that, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
Heart health galas, and women's heart health especially.
Yes.
Tends to get ignored.
Right. You know what wasn't ignored last night at the Grammys?
What?
The Houston Grand Opera.
HGO won a Grammy.
Yep.
It's their third one.
It's their third one.
So congratulations to them.
Yep. It was the recording of Intelligence that won. So congratulations to the Houston Grand
debut,
Opera.
And it was recorded live at the Wortham Center. Yeah, which I thought was really kind of cool.
That's super cool.
You know, people that I know that like opera love opera.
Yeah.
Yes.
And same with ballet. They don't just like ballet; they love ballet.
Yeah.
So there are certain, just passions that people have for those kind of arts.
And we're a little spoiled here in Houston. A lot
We
of
have
people
them all.
don't realize in a lot of major cities they have one or two or three. We've got, with the theater district downtown, we've got 7 strong art presenters that present in the different areas of the arts.
And every major sports.
Yeah.
And a place to play those sports. Fields and NRG and Toyota
Is that
Center.
maybe why Houston is so popular? We're always hearing people want to come here because we've got everything.
We do have everything, and the restaurants are just terrific. We're going to Kieran's tonight, the Indian restaurant on Richmond, for Kevin's birthday.
Oh,
yes.
Well, happy birthday to Kevin from us.
You know what else we have
What
in
else do we have?
Houston? Representation for the 18th Congressional District.
I think Celeste wants to get to the headlines. What do you think?
Well, and I want to, yes. Go
Frank
ahead.
isn't.
No, but I have a question for you, but go ahead. Let's hear the headlines.
Celeste, take us into the headlines.
Voters in Texas' 18th Congressional District have chosen a new representative ending nearly a year without representation in Washington. Former Harris County Attorney Christian Menefee won Saturday's special election runoff, defeating former Houston City Council member Amanda Edwards. Menefee captured about 68% of the vote, while Edwards received just over 31%, and that was according to the Harris County Clerk's Office. Menefee expanded his advantage after early voting, with more than 23,000 ballots cast overall, including about 10,000 on Election Day. Now is the time to join us on Hello Houston. Did you vote in the special election? And if so, what motivated your choice? You can text or call 713-440-8870.
Okay, here I'm going to rain on people's parades for a minute here. The Texas Congressional District 18, which had that special election, where the total votes cast were about just under 24,000 votes total, has a population of 773,000 people. Come on, folks. Vote. What?
Well, how many are over the age of 18?
Yeah,
There's
all
that.
right. Yeah, but
Maybe 500,000?
Okay, yeah.
Adults?
Yeah. Any way you look at it, it's a pretty low turnout. Only about, I'm seeing one report here from HPM, if I'm reading this correctly. Oh, no, that was just on the first day of voting. Less than 1% voted. But,
let me ask you this about the voting trend.
Okay.
So this was about 70-30 for Chris.
Yes.
Doesn't that give you some idea that those who voted are really united, that there's not a 52-48 split. Mm-hmm. There's a huge number of people for one philosophy over another, or whatever that is. I don't know what, I didn't see any polls that said I voted for him because of this or her because of that. But when you see a 70-30 like that, it's like, wow, people got behind this guy. And we saw what happened in North Texas in the Fort Worth district, which has been Republican since 1970.
Very
and now
interesting.
gets turned over by a Democrat. Also, low turnout.
Right.
But
I think
solidified turnout of the voting that was there. It was very solid.
I would almost say, and what you're saying is valid, that, there's a support behind there's united support behind a candidate. But the other way to look at it is, with such a small turnout, it was about the candidate getting their bases to show up. And so you only had to get under 14,000 people had to vote in the early vote, and only 10,000 on actual vote on Election Day. So that's a tiny percentage of people. So it really, I think, reflects more how organized was your ground crew, how well were you at reaching, how well were you at getting your voters to the polls, what kind of things did you do in the community to shuttle people to the polls and back and forth. Now, if you're talking about a vote total of 250,000, and the majority were behind one candidate, I would fall more into your camp. But I look at it as name recognition, who got people out, how did they get them out? And that's what's becoming so important in the way we vote, is getting your voters to the poll. We've talked about this on the show before. where there's some conventional wisdom that says there are more Democratic voters in the state, more Democratic-leaning eligible voters in the state of Texas that are Democrat than Republican, but more Republicans show up to vote. And that's why we see what we see.
Do you think that some of the psychology behind Saturday's vote was, you know what, whoever gets this is only there for a year because March 3rd is going to reelect yet another person to that position? And people said, you know what, whatever. They're only there for 9-10 months, really, and that's it. So this isn't a real election.
I don't think most people really were thinking about that. Most people aren't aware of it. We were going to talk about this. Today is the last day to register to vote in the March primaries.
Yeah.
And those are important. They're not just for the new Texas 18th, but they're also for governor and lieutenant governor and all that.
But my understanding is
Attorney
Amanda
General.
Edwards will be on that ballot.
Both of them are going to run
Chris
again.
Menefee and Al Green.
And Al Green.
So it's going to be, I think, a much more interesting, obviously, race.
To your earlier question, what I would think is that people were thinking they both have very similar stances on the issues. They're both Democrats. They both would represent us well. And so whoever I was talking to somebody who said, I'm not voting because it doesn't matter. Either one that gets in is going to do the same thing. Yeah. And I think that plays into a little voter apathy. But I think, and also, we're running two Democrats against each other in a runoff. So either way, a Democrat wins. If you're a Democrat, you feel like you're safe. When you have someone from each party, then that comes more into play. What were you going to say, Celeste?
And when we look at Christian Menefee and Amanda Edwards and we look at their policy, they were pretty in line on a lot of things. There wasn't one they didn't seem very polar opposite. Like you said, they were both Democrats. They had both pretty in line with the same, looking at how they would essentially represent District 18. I would say one of the unifying factors for Christian Menefee was that he has been continuously still in public service as the district attorney, county attorney. And I think that was, a factor when people were going simple name recognition within the area.
That comes down to money. I saw Chris Menefee's ads on TV a lot.
Yeah.
And he was doing the father thing, and then he was doing the I'm a fighter thing. I didn't see a lot of Amanda's.
Yeah, and I don't think she had the money for all of that.
And what's interesting is we have a governor saying, I have $90 million to turn Harris County red. So money may be it always is, but may be a huge factor.
It's going to be really interesting. If you have not yet registered to vote in the upcoming primary, and this is an important primary, you're going to be deciding also between James Tallarico and Jasmine Crockett on the Democratic side, and then Cornyn or Paxton or Hunt on the Republican side for our U.S. Senator for the state. That's happening in the March primary between those two and those two camps. So you want to make sure you're registered to vote. So check online at harrisvotes.com, see what you need to do if you're not registered, and make sure you get out there and vote. Very
just as a matter of housekeeping, there were no irregularities or problems with this vote on Saturday.
Right.
Yeah.
And again, 713-440-8870. You can call or text 713-440-8870.
Did you vote? Did you not vote? We're curious to find out.
If you did it, don't call because Ernie will chastise you.
I'm a little voting like a hall monitor here, making sure everyone gets out there and votes.
We've noticed.
And just and to put a button on all of that, the whole idea that, for me, I don't even care what side you're voting on. The fact is, if you have an opinion and you are educated about issues and you want to see your community run well, get out there and vote. This is an opportunity we are given in this country to control the future of how things go. If you're not voting, that's on you. Anyway.
713-440-8870. You're listening to Hello Houston.
Well, that haircut made him so smart.
Yeah, well, because my head can float in the clouds now. Okay. Another story. Independent journalist Don Lemon and Georgia Fort say they will keep reporting after being released from federal custody following their arrests after covering an anti-immigration enforcement protest at a St. Paul, Minnesota church. A federal grand jury indicted both on civil rights-related charges. Lemon, of course, as you know, is a former CNN anchor, and Fort, a Minneapolis area reporter. Insists that they were documenting the events as journalists, not participating in the protest. Lemon's attorney called the action an unprecedented attack on the First Amendment, but has vowed to fight the charges in court. So what are your thoughts? Was Lemon reporting or protesting? Was he simply doing his job as a journalist? or working to create a social media moment. What do you think? 713-440-8870. Thoughts?
Well, in the pastor part of the ICE.
That's the allegation that was made why the protest was happening.
Yeah. So they decided to protest at his church.
Yeah.
And that's a legitimate, that is a man bites dog story. I mean, that's a whole different game there, that this pastor is with ICE and now these people are showing up to protest, I guess, his membership or his allegiance to or whatever.
Well, the thing, though, keep in mind, it's that they went inside the church. That's where the big problem is.
The churches want you inside. That's all you ever hear.
They
Come
want
join
you
our church.
Celeste, what are your thoughts?
When government attack journalists, the cost is paid by the public. At the end of the day, when governments attack journalists, the cost is paid by the public. At first glance, I thought, this is a real, attack on the First Amendment and the ability for journalists to be able to work. I will also say, on the other line, I'm not sure that going into a church is the best way to get your message across. Some would say, well, it is absolutely the best way. We're all talking about it. There's a lot of question around it. However, looking at Don Lemon, I'm thinking to myself, that felt a little performative. And I think that there are ways to have impact without, causing so much of a disruption of asking how was this handled? Was it handled without there's so much around it? And it just felt very performative. I do have real issue with people protesting within churches. That is a sacred space. I don't think, regardless of the pastor was a part of ICE. Let me tell you, there are a lot of pastors that stand at the pulpit that people should rush in and question what they're doing, right? Mm-hmm. However, I don't think, as a regular churchgoer, it felt to me disruptive. I did not think that was the right way. I think Don Lemon should know better. There are ways to get your message across in a much more productive way. It's unfortunate. You can seek truth. Right. You can seek truth and help the public understand your message without going inside a church.
I don't know exactly the temperature, but we were having another spell of 27 degrees Sunday morning. I imagine that church outside was pretty dangerously cold.
Yeah, but the weather doesn't dictate what's legal and what's not
it's
legal.
Not. Was it illegal for the protesters to show up in the church?
And inside the church is where the question is. Did they're going in to protest cross a line? Nobody is saying they didn't have, well, maybe some are, but legally nobody's saying they didn't have the right to protest outside the church.
Isn't that where the story was? The story is where the protesters were. Why are you here? What are you doing?
Right.
Well, how are you going to have that story outside the church?
Right, but the bigger question is where did Don Lemon fit into the story?
He was covering it like a journalist.
Covering it, or was he part of it? Did he?
That's the big question.
There's a video out there of him there giving coffee to the protesters and talking with them and friendlying with them and talking about what they're going to do. So the question comes, was he in the planning of it to create? And that's why I even changed our question to, was he trying to create a social media moment? Was he creating something so that he could then cover it and be there on the scene because he was working?
That's a whole different accusation.
Right. And that's the issue that I have here, is that he is crossing lines, making it difficult for all journalists. And that's my issue. A free press is a safeguard against authoritarianism. Flat out, when journalists are targeted, it's often a warning sign that the democratic norms are under threat. And so there's this kind of blanketed issue that we're seeing across right now within our democracy of questioning where journalists are doing their job, when it's becoming too much of their own platform. So we're questioning journalism and democracy in general. Mm-hmm. And then to have Don Lemon go inside a church does not do anybody any favors.
But wait a minute, it wasn't services. I mean, this protest was happening.
So
the church then sort of becomes a building, unless you want to argue that
no,
the church
there was. They were having
their
Sunday morning service.
But then the protests take over.
they came in and disrupted the
right. And
the
so
service.
he, as a journalist, said, "What's going on?"
Right.
So why was he and Georgia the only ones that were arrested?
They
why
were the
weren't
high-profile
protesters?
ones.
Why weren't protesters arrested? They're the ones that were really making the story.
Right, and I'm not sure. I assume that there were protesters arrested too. These two are getting attention because they were journalists. For me, the question is, where is now once the protest begins in the church, once the action has begun in the church, for Don Lemon to have been in there to cover it, I think is fine. I think once the event has happened. For me, my question lies, how involved was he in the event happening?
Well, you'll never know the answer
Right.
to that.
And,
Covering a protest inside a church, I don't know. Come on.
If somebody is shot inside of a church and it's a story and the media comes in and covers that, they're coming into the church once the event has happened. That's where I'm falling on it. I think that he has a right to cover it. I think he has a right to report on it. I think if the timeline I'm seeing is right, the disruption had happened before he started interviewing people. So if that's the case, I have less concern. I'm more concerned whether or not he was instigating.
713-440-8870. Let's go to James from the Woodlands. James, welcome to Hello Houston.
Hello and happy Monday. I have about as much information as you do about what happened, which is not complete. You know, I've tried to gather as much as I could. However, I am totally for freedom of the press, and if a protest happens in a church, which it doesn't happen all the time, this is not a frequency.
Right.
That I believe that is appropriate, and if he was a journalist, he has a right to cover that. Now, why he was arrested and the other people weren't, I'm not sure. Of course, I feel like the police have a right to arrest people, but we have a right to freedom of assembly and protest against things that we have grievances against, and so this is our freedom, like it or not. I'll say one last thing. Jesus would be arrested for going into churches and turning over tables and calling people out. He did that during his ministry. So I feel it's our right as Americans to do this.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for that. I also want to clarify, too, from my point of view, is that I also think Don Lemon has a right to be involved in protests if he wants to, but he has to know which hat he's wearing. We all have a right to protest what we don't believe in, and even if his job is as a journalist, well, then are you there as a protester with this group of people standing up against something you don't believe in, or are you there to cover it as a journalist? There are two different
That's the other problem,
right
is that if you're a journalist and you go to a protest, you're taking a side. So you can no longer report.
Why are you taking a side?
If you're
Fill me in on
going
that.
to a protest, if you're marching in a protest for something with people,
and you have a camera and a microphone, and you're walking with them and asking them questions,
that's
doesn't make
covering
you,
it.
Well, that's what he was doing. From what I saw, that's exactly what Don Lemon was doing.
Yeah,
he had a camera and he had a little microphone, wasn't a big microphone, and he was talking to people.
And I did see where he was talking to the minister of the church.
Pastor asked him to leave.
When he said to him, "I'm Don Lemon. I'm here covering it. I'm not part of the protest. I'm covering it. I'm a journalist here." And he was establishing that when he did his interviews. What's the last?
He was going where the story was.
Yeah.
And we have to assume he did not tell those people to go inside the church. They did that because it was cold outside and they wanted to go in the church to protest. And so he followed them in. Now, to your point, maybe he organized the whole thing. And
I don't think he organized the whole thing, but what he knew. I'm going to tell you, I'm going to read something we had that just came in. It said rap. We've gone too long in this segment.
Coming up on Hello Houston, Pastor D.Z. Cofield, who will join us to discuss Black History Month and tell us about his charity, Hope for Families. This is News 88.7.
Hi, I'm Lenny Ambrose from St. Arnold Brewing Company, proud supporters of Houston Public Media. Right now, with your $60 donation, you can choose tickets to News and Brews. This member-exclusive event takes place February 17th. Enjoy a pint, connect with fellow NPR fans, and meet the Houston Public Media newsroom in person. Select News and Brews tickets when you donate at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate.
Found that 50 million Americans now have limited or no access to reliable local news. More than half of the country's major daily newspapers are now owned by just a handful of parent companies. What does it all mean for how news gets made and who gets heard? And who's trying to chart a new path forward? Our series, If You Can Keep It, returns next time on 1A.
Listen to 1A is coming up today at 2 o'clock.
I'm Jeremy Hobson. Next time on The middle class has long been seen as the backbone of the American economy, a marker of stability, opportunity, and upward mobility. But rising costs, stagnant wages, and economic uncertainty have many Americans asking, what is the middle class in 2026, and is it still achievable? That's our question next time on The Middle.
You can hear that Thursday night at 8 p.m.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Metro, introducing the Ride Metro Fare Card. The Ride Metro fare system replaces the Metro Q Fare Card for bus and rail fares. Details at ridemetro.org/fare system. Support comes from Specs Wines, Spirits, and Finer Foods. February is Wine Month, providing a range of wine for gatherings and celebrations all month long. More at specs.com. Specs, the fun starts here.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz-Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
As we mark the start of Black History Month, we're joined by Pastor D.Z. Cofield. He's a senior pastor of the historic Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church right here in Houston. Pastor Cofield is going to share his thoughts on the meaning of this month and talk about Hope for Families, a nonprofit focused on supporting and strengthening urban communities. Pastor Cofield, welcome to Hello Houston.
Man, thank you. Honored to be here with you.
We were just talking about it, Pastor.
Yeah.
You have any thoughts on what happened there?
Yeah, I think the line gets really blurred, especially when you talk about a pastor who's functioning in a bivocational way. You know, as a leader of ICE and a leader of the congregation, those two things kind of got, convoluted in there. And so here come people, they're not protesting his messages, they're not protesting his sermons, they're not protesting his leadership, they're protesting his secular job. And that becomes a little dicey to me.
I kind of agree with them. I would protest that also. For
well, and if you want to protest, I don't know if I'm comfortable with you protesting me in my pastoral position for something that I do in another position. Why wouldn't you go to the ICE office and protest? Why would you come and disrupt my service and our faith community?
Do you have a concern with the crossing of the line of either protesting outside the church or protesting inside the church?
No, I mean, protesting is a part of, our country. It's a part of our history. I just think, it was a very extreme move. They knew it would get attention. It was a sensational act.
Yeah.
And so, it got the coverage that they wanted to get.
Well, when I heard that the pastor was part of ICE, I really kind of did a triple take. I mean, that just doesn't seem like the kind of hobby you would have on the side.
Yeah. I was shocked at that as well.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, man, because to me, the way ICE is acting is really contrary to what we believe are principles of Scripture, principles of, Islam, Judaism. I mean, just basic tenets around how we treat strangers and how we, should exercise a spirit of hospitality.
Do unto others.
Yeah. So I was really surprised at that as well. I don't know how he, justifies or rationalizes that. That's his own individual journey.
Pastor Cofield, I think that you said essentially like what I was trying to explain, that there's so many things that were happening at the exact same time. And it feels like during this time, we are having to hold space for many different parts of our lives that don't necessarily seem to be coinciding with others.
Yeah. There definitely isn't a congruity there, between those things. And when you have things that are, juxtaposed to each other that are kind of at the opposite ends of the spectrum, at least in people's mind. It's kind of like, wow, how do we balance that? How do we blend that?
When you look at the world today and what we're going through, in some ways, does it change the focus of how you even address something like Black History Month? Are there new and different lessons to be gleaned from it when we look at our current situation?
Yeah, I think the challenge for me as an African American is recognizing that there are those in our state and those in our country who want to erase the past and want to erase misdeeds of the past. And in erasing the misdeeds of the past, you erase the positivity of other people's past. You don't tell the whole story, right? And history is his story, right? So it's whoever tells the story, and I've traveled around the world, and it's always interesting to me when I talk to people from other countries, their perspective of events, global events that, like we're always the winners, when you go somewhere else and they're the winners, and it's kind of like, well, how did everybody win? You know? And so, you see certain things and it really is damaging to, I believe, the overall fabric of a community when you deny what they have done and you deny the impact that they have had, instead of recognizing that there's room at the table to celebrate everybody. And everybody's history is part of American history. That's what makes America America.
Probably a lot of people don't realize Black History Month really was created about 1915.
Yeah.
I mean, that was sort of the beginnings of it, to do exactly what you just said, to honor and celebrate what the Black people had done up to that point and to continue that part of their whole historical base.
Yeah, it was interesting. There was a clip not long ago when President Trump was celebrating historical accomplishments, and he was making a statement that, we invented everything, and he listed about 7 things that were invented in this country, and they were all invented by African American people, right? But of course, he wouldn't give African American people credit. He just said, America's great, and we've done this, we've created everything, and everything that he named on that list was invented by an African American.
So those were the black jobs he referred to in his campaign.
Right.
Yeah,
right.
And then February has interesting significance because the birthday of Lincoln and Frederick Douglass.
Correct.
So the 12th and the 14th of the month.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get all this. I think that a lot of people just accept Black History Month kind of started. They don't know why. They don't know why it was February.
Yeah.
They don't know its roots and its history. So that's where I'm going with
and I think the other thing, Frank, to your point, is that people don't realize how much history has been created around them. So I'll give you an example. I've been at the Good Hope Church now. It'll be 32 years this year. We're 153 years old, be 154 years next month. And when I looked at the history of our church, in 1944, there was a Supreme Court ruling, Smith versus Allwright. The plaintiff in that case was Lonnie Smith. He was a dentist. He was a trustee at the Good Hope Church. And that lawsuit was filed to eradicate the idea that the Democratic Party, and back then they were Dixie Democrats, could hold a primary election and exclude other races. Only white men could vote in primary elections in 1940s, up until 1944. Smith versus Allwright, Dr. Lonnie Smith was chosen because he was a dentist. Most of his business was in the African American community. And so they felt like the white community could not retaliate against him or cause him to lose his business. That case was argued all the way to the Supreme Court by Thurgood Marshall 10 years before Brown versus the Board of Education. That's a piece of history right here.
Right. I just learned it.
In Houston. And then, of course, out of that, you have a little girl that grows up in that church in the midst of that fight, in the midst of that struggle, in the midst of that celebration by the name of Barbara Jordan.
Wow.
And so here she is growing up in that church, seeing her parents, her older siblings in there, and she is now inspired by that kind of work, right? Tremendous history. And I can tell you this, as a young boy growing up in the Jacob Riis housing projects of New York City, I remember sitting at the chair of my grandmother watching Barbara Jordan speak on television, never knowing that time would have it that I would become her pastor and would end up doing her funeral. And so, when we talk about history, there's living history around us that we need to take note of. It's more than just what's in the textbooks. It's actually what's happening around us. And we see moments of living history all the time.
And it's so interesting how, as we're talking about Barbara Jordan, we were just talking about District 18, the congressional district that, really in many ways put our area on the national news. Once again, looking at racial mongering, and looking at what was happening right here in this area.
Yep.
When we look at Black history and we look at history in general and Black History Month, what do you think people get wrong?
I think we get wrong the idea that all history is valuable history and the importance of people telling their own story. Too many times, people tell the story for somebody else. And normally, when you tell the story for somebody else, you're the hero and they're the villain. I've taught for many years, and one of the basic principles that I've learned is you never let students grade their own papers. They always come up with an A. I don't care if it's multiple choice, true, false, they always come up with an A.
Clever, that.
Right. And when people tell their own story without taking into account those who are part of that story, even if they're not the main character, when you tell your own story at the exclusion of somebody else, they're typically the villains and you're always the hero. And so we have to let people tell their own story. And that's one of the reasons I so appreciate Houston Public Media, because you give people an opportunity to tell their story. And when you hear those stories, you go like, wow, man, that's amazing. I was in Russia not long ago, and you can't move around Russia unless you have a state-sanctioned guide. And, very professional. And then we just kind of pulled the guide aside and was like, man, what do you think about Americans? Not just African Americans, but Americans, And she was like, well, you people are really nice because, they tell us like you eat dogs and you do all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, are you serious? And so as we began to exchange and talk, I realized that their country does much of what we do. We villainize people we don't know. We villainize positions we don't agree with, instead of trying to see how can we find a common ground so there's a win-win for
I do want to get Hope for Families in here before we run out of time. Tell us about that.
So Hope for Families is an interesting organization. It's a 501c3. I actually started Hope for Families when I first arrived at the church. Barbara Jordan was one of our advisory board members, and there were a lot of projects that we were working on. And of course, she passed in 1996. But Hope for Families right now, what we focus on is rebuilding communities one family at a time. We have an extensive food pantry that allows us to address a lot of the food insecurities that exist in our community. We started off targeting 4 zip codes. And over the last 2 years, we've ended up serving people from every zip code in the Houston metropolitan area.
Really?
We distribute right under 1 million pounds of food a year. And again, all of that is funded through our membership and our volunteers and others who donate. The other project that is very, very dear to my heart is Project Hope. We work with children, middle school, high school, elementary school, and work with their families to try to stem the tide of the school to prison pipeline. How can we get in the lives of these children, mentor them, encourage them, and also walk with their parents as well to help equip them in a variety of ways. We partner with the district attorney's office to make sure that these children, especially with minor offenses, that we can help get them on the right road before they get on the wrong road in a permanent way.
If you had to guess, what's your success rate?
So our children, here's what's interesting, especially with our mentoring program, we've been able to disaggregate the data and show that those children that we mentor, those children that we work with and their families, grades went up significantly, so much so that the superintendent and the staff at HISD asked us to adopt a middle school as another middle school and an elementary school as well. And so we're with an elementary school right now, along with Cullen Middle School, Foster Elementary School, working with that principal there, encouraging their teachers and mentoring their staff as well.
Wow.
Can I ask you something on a philosophical level? We talk about this help and this aid and what charities do, such as yours. Philosophically, how do we get to the point that we don't need those charities? Is there a way, or have we created an environment in which this is always how it'll have to operate to keep people fed, clothed, housed?
Yeah. So I'm concerned, and we're committed to not being a toxic charity. And for me, a toxic charity is a charity that doesn't give people a hand up, but it actually makes people dependent upon them. Mm-hmm. And so for us, it's always important to make sure people that we are serving and working with have skin in the game. Mm-hmm. Here's the other thing about the presence of the poor. Jesus said the poor will always be with us. Mm-hmm. And I think part of that is a challenge to those of us who have been blessed and who have risen to a certain level of life and living to say to us, these people are not only there because they need your help, but they're also there because you need help, to help you become the best person you can be. Because when we give, we're at our best. And so how do we become now less focused on things and more focused on people, and not just helping people, but in our everyday lives, right? Because we have a mentality now where we love things and we use people instead of loving people and using things. Mm-hmm. And so how can we, with the presence of these people, see them as an opportunity? Our church has been really involved in a lot of relief work. And I always tell our staff, I always tell our volunteers, when people come, thank them for giving us the privilege to be able to serve them.
Yeah, people who give are the happiest people.
Right. And so when we see that as a privilege, we don't see it as a drain. We don't see it. No, man, it's our privilege to actually be who God created us to be, who we say we are, right? Because we recognize that the key for us is not coming to church or having good church, it's being church, right? And so when we be the church, we actually fulfill our potential and become who God created us to be.
Nice. Well, I'm surprised Hollywood hasn't called you to take over for the Darth Vader voice. But it's a pleasure. It's a pleasure having you here today.
No, I'm honored to be here with you all, and thank you all for taking this time to celebrate and just shine a light on Black History Month and help people understand that it's really all of our history.
It's our pleasure.
Yeah.
Pastor D.Z. Cofield is the senior pastor of the historic Good Hope Missionary Baptist Church in Houston. Pastor Cofield, again, thank you for joining us today on Hello Houston.
My pleasure.
Coming up, we're going to talk to Maureen Patton. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
We know you value Houston Public Media. That's why you're watching right now. So take the next step and become a new member of the station you rely on. Every gift makes a difference. And what matters most right now is supporting the station that brings you the news and information you rely on. It only takes a minute to make a big difference. So join as a new member today at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 800-364-8300.
Astrophysicist Brian Greene explaining the scientific theory that our universe is just one of many.
And the image that I like to have in mind is, imagine that our universe is like one slice of bread in a much grander cosmic loaf, with the other slices of bread being other universes.
No subject is too big for fresh air. Join us.
Fresh Air, weekdays at 8 p.m. on News 88.7.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now back to Ernie Manous, Celeste Diaz Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
The Grand 1894 Opera House is a historic performing arts theater located in Galveston that's been captivating audiences for more than a century. In addition to being viewed as one of the many treasures found in Galveston, the Grand is also recognized as the official opera house of Texas. Now, for more than 40 years, this historic theater has been under the leadership of Executive Director Maureen Patton. I cannot believe it's been 40 years you've been there.
Well, I started when I was 12, so it's okay.
Okay, then that works. She oversees the administration, the programming, and fundraising while also helping the theater navigate and has some very challenging times. Last month, though, Maureen received a national award for excellence in presenting the performing arts from the North American Performing Arts Managers and Agents in recognition of her work at the Grand. So to tell us more about the Grand and what they've got going on, please welcome Maureen Patton.
Yay.
Hello, Maureen.
It is such a pleasure to be with my friends.
Well,
here
it's good
at
to
the
have
studio.
you here.
I'm just delighted, and yeah, we've got a lot going on, and we're about to embark on a major capital campaign. It's interesting after you restore something, and it was about 35 years ago we finished the restoration the way you see it today. You have to re-restore.
Yeah.
I mean, new systems, whether it's air conditioning, it's the seating, it's the cleaning the ceiling, it's everything.
I'm surprised after Ike you came back.
We did, and you know how fast we did. You know,
Yes.
that's one of my funny stories that I tell, because I was standing on the stage like 2 weeks after Ike, so we're talking about end of September, and I'm standing there with my architect and my contractor, and I'm looking out at the soggy seats, and I said to him, okay, I want to open on January 3rd, and he did not miss a beat, and he said, what year? And I said, this coming January 3rd, that's our anniversary. That's the anniversary of us opening.
Yeah.
And I said, after the 1900 storm, when the whole wall of the backstage was blown out and the whole roof was off, I said, they reopened in 13 months. And we've got a lot of damage, but we don't have that kind of damage. And so we need to do it. I've got a sold-out show of Jerry Jeff Walker on January 3rd, and I want to be open on our anniversary. And he's looking at me. You can see the look on his face. You know, the woman has gone around the bend because she's suffered all this damage. And then I said, we don't have to be finished. We just have to be ready. And he said, what does that mean? And I said, well, we have to have seats. And by the way, we have to do all of them because they won't match if we don't. And we were going to refurbish them anyway. We have to have air conditioning. The stage has to work, the restrooms, you know, the things that are part of the people. And I said, but we didn't have the stage damage, so we're ready to go. And I said, if you can then work for 4 days, I'll give it to you, 7 days a week right now. But once we open, if you can work 4 days and turn it over to me for the weekend, I can move everything from the fall into the spring, and we'll have a whole season. And if we don't, we're going to really be in trouble. It's going to be so devastating to us. And he's looking at me, and he starts kind of muttering to himself, you know, don't have to be finished, have to be ready, whatever. Then he looks at me, and he says, okay, I'll make it work. And then I thought, okay, he's lost his mind. I thought he probably was thinking I'd gone around the bend. Now I'm thinking he has no idea what I've asked him to do. And we opened on January 3rd. We had 2,000 people come through the theater on tours that day and have birthday cake. Steve Smith was our MC, and he kept telling stories, you know, as people were going through. And that night, Jerry Jeff brought me out on stage and handed me a check from his foundation to help with the repairs.
Nice. Wow.
And we kept going. And we just kept going.
It's funny you tell that story, and I think people don't realize in a position that you have, it's not just about, who are the acts that should come to town.
No.
It is a whole organization that you're running with renovations and saving and fundraising. You know, it's so much more than what we see on the stage. But thanks to all that work, you've brought some really great stuff to that stage.
We have, you know, and I love doing what I do. In fact, I said to the people who gave me the award, I said, why would I get an award for doing something I love so much? You know, I'm very uncomfortable with that. I'm very embarrassed by it. But I started my life as a singer, and my first solo was in church at the age of 4, and that sort of set the path. And I told them, I said, I love applause. Yeah. I said, but I'm really uncomfortable, you know, with the award thing. And but so thrilled, and because it came from the managers and the agents with whom I've worked for 44 years, that's something special. You know, all of us are dependent on each other, and because I grew up as a performer, I understand the performers' needs and how they need to be treated, and what has to happen, and how to make them comfortable and make the audience appreciate what's up there. So, you know, we've had Johnny Mathis, and we've had Tony Bennett, and, you know,
we were talking the other day, Liza Minnelli.
Liza Minnelli was
she
there.
lost her luggage.
Oh,
B. Arthur.
You remember that?
Yes.
Yes. She lost her luggage, and they stopped at the Galleria to let them go shopping.
So she'd have something to wear on stage.
Yes, yes. I mean, it's hysterical. And B. Arthur was there, and I had to call a doctor for her because she had a bad. She sounded probably like me. She had a bad sinus infection. And she said, I just need the doctor to see me and see if there's something he can do. And, of course, because Galveston is a small community and we all know each other, and I called my doctor. And I said, can you do this for me? He went to take care of her at the hotel. And she was so appreciative about that. Yeah. It's kind of what we do. It's who we are. And it really is about connections. It's connections between management and the artist. It's connections between the artist and the audience and the theater, and how they appreciate the theater. We just had 50 Years of Rock and Roll Part 5 at the theater because there's so much rock and roll. He keeps doing it, adding on. And it's one of the most popular shows we've ever done. Probably because all of those people in the audience are my age, and we all grew up in the rock and roll era. And I'm telling you, when you say the place was rocking, it was rocking. And people went out of there joyous and thrilled and couldn't wait. Are you going to get them back? Get them, bring them back, bring them back. And in today's world, all of us need joy. I mean, this is a hard world. We've had, we've had COVID, and we've had disasters, and we've had deaths and all the rest of it. And one of the things that the arts have always done is to bring joy and to bring challenges, challenge you to think, challenge you to appreciate something on that stage that maybe you hadn't even thought about, but you come. Garrison Keillor was at our theater this year on December 9th, which was my birthday.
Oh, happy birthday.
And I have all kinds of stories about how I get the artists there and my nefarious maneuvers. But this is about the third time. Once they came, they love being there. And I get the calls from them saying, Garrison is going out to do such and such. Would you like to have him? The answer is always yes.
Sure.
And people love him. But it was on a Tuesday, and it was my birthday. So I told him, I said, this is unique. I've got you here. It's my birthday. I'm celebrating my birthday with you. And he had just had the same birthday a couple of months before. So when I went out to thank the audience, to be there and welcome the sponsors and so forth, he said, I'm going to go out with you, and then after you're finished, then I will start the show. And he is, we've become, if not close friends, we've become colleagues. Mm-hmm. So I go out, and he's standing behind me, and people are taking pictures of him a lot taller than me. And then, so I welcomed him. I start to leave. He puts his hand on my shoulder and said, just a minute. And he says, now, you may not know this, but today is Maureen's birthday, and I think we should sing happy birthday to her. So he led the audience in singing happy birthday to me.
Very nice.
That is a unique birthday, for sure.
Definitely.
That is special. And Maureen Patton is the executive director of the Grand 1894 Opera House. Maureen, thanks for joining us today on Hello Houston.
I love being here.
Yeah.
I used to come up here a lot. So y'all just have me come all the time.
You've been a great friend of the station for many, many years. You have helped us in a lot of ways. You have, yes. And for folks to find out everything you've got going on the rest of this season, they can go to thegrand.com.
That's it. It's an easy thing to remember for our website.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And coming up, we're going to continue discussing today's top stories that you're not going to want to miss.
Thank you.
Are we dead?
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
It's easy to suffer from information overload these days. Social media posts that just keep scrolling, bite-sized headlines sent to your phone and even your watch. I'm Ira Flato. Every week on Science Friday, we take a step back for a longer look into the big ideas in science. Take a deeper dive with us. It's all on Science Friday from WNYC Studios.
Science Friday, every Friday, 1 p.m. on News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Metro, introducing the Ride Metro Fare Card. The Ride Metro fare system replaces the Metro Q Fare Card for bus and rail fares. Details at ridemetro.org/fare system.
Some clouds today. We'll get up to around 69, a low near 58 at 65. And this is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston. News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, Texas A&M University has announced that it will be ending its Women's and Gender Studies degree program. We'll find out why as we discuss more of today's top headlines. I'm Celeste Diaz-Sherman.
And I'm Frank Billingsley. We'll also be joined by Julianna Washburn, News 88.7's Galveston County reporter. She'll tell us all about the rescue of 100 sea turtles in Galveston.
And I'm Ernie Manous. Plus, February is American Heart Month. We'll talk with Memorial Hermann about how we can keep your heart healthy.
Also, we want to hear from you. Give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us live on YouTube by going to houstonpublicmedia.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, by Metro, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Kristen Wright. Immigration agents in Minnesota have arrested more than 100 refugees despite their legal status. NPR's Jennifer Ludden reports it's part of a larger administration plan to re-examine refugee cases.
When ICE agents arrested one 20-year-old refugee, his mother says she felt the same fear her family had fled in Venezuela. There, masked paramilitary groups kidnap people, she says. She did not want to use her name for fear of retaliation. The Trump administration says it's reviewing refugee cases for potential fraud. But Jane Grotman with the International Institute of Minnesota says they are already intensely vetted.
You know, the FBI has already checked them. They've had biometric screenings.
Many have been detained in Texas, then released with no charges. A class action lawsuit calls arresting refugees unlawful, and a judge has ordered them stopped while the case plays out. Jennifer Ludden, NPR News, Minneapolis.
Aid organizations are raising the alarm over interrupted assistance to a detention camp for the families of ISIS fighters in northeastern Syria. It holds more than 10,000 children. NPR's Jane Araf has more.
Save the Children warns that food and medicine is running dangerously low at El Hol camp after Syrian government forces took control in January after clashes with Kurdish-led fighters. The group's Syria director, Rasha Mahrez, says 60% of the roughly 20,000 detainees there are children, detained with their mothers while their fathers were killed or imprisoned when ISIS fell 7 years ago.
And they're all 100% aid dependent, so there is no other source of income apart from what aid agencies are able to deliver.
Thousands of the detainees are foreigners whose countries will not take them back. Aid groups are calling for a humanitarian corridor to allow safe passage for aid. Jane Araf, NPR News, Amman.
The mother of Today Show host Savannah Guthrie is missing. Officials in Arizona held a press conference this morning. Pima County Sheriff Chris Nanos says authorities are investigating the disappearance of 84-year-old Nancy Guthrie as a crime.
I think I told you she is very limited in her mobility, right? We know she didn't just walk out of there. That we know. There are other things at the scene that indicate she did not leave on her own.
The sheriff says things found at her home near Tucson are of grave concern. House Speaker Mike Johnson says the House won't vote on ending the partial government shutdown until tomorrow at the earliest. There's disagreement over the government's immigration enforcement operations. The Senate approved funds for the Department of Homeland Security only through late next week, giving Congress until then to reach consensus on new restrictions on ICE. You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Tom Perumian. In an upset win on Saturday, Democrat Taylor Ramett flipped a Texas state Senate seat in Tarrant County that went for President Donald Trump by 17 points less than 2 years ago. News 88.7 political reporter Andrew Schneider says the special election runoff could have ramifications for Republicans across Texas and beyond.
The district, centered on Fort Worth, has been a GOP stronghold since the early 1990s. But on Saturday, Ramett, an Air Force veteran and union leader, beat his Republican opponent Lee Wamsghan by double digits. Mark Jones teaches political science at Rice University.
Moderate Republicans during the past few election cycles have tended to hold their nose and vote for the more conservative candidates who perhaps they did not agree with, but sided with them over their Democratic rival. In this election, some of those more moderate Republicans voted Democratic or stayed home.
Trump endorsed Wamsghan shortly before the election. On Sunday, he claimed he didn't know a thing about the contest. I'm Andrew Schneider, News 88.7.
Investigators are looking into what led up to a 20-year-old woman getting hit and killed in Midtown last night. The crash occurred on Pierce Street near Emancipation Avenue. KHOU reports that the driver will likely be charged with intoxication manslaughter. Police suspect the driver of the vehicle had been drinking at a nearby bar before the crash. 5 vehicles were also hit during the incident. Checking your weather, partly sunny and windy today with a high of 70 degrees. It'll be mostly cloudy and windy tonight with a low of 57. Showers and thunderstorms are likely on Tuesday with a high near 72. Right now, it's mostly sunny, 65 degrees on the UH campus. Get the whole story. For more news and information, go to houstonpublicmedia.org. I'm Tom Perumian, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Made in Cookware. Made in Cookware is crafted by chefs for use in restaurants and home kitchens around the world. Their cookware can be found at madeincookware.com. This is NPR.
Live from Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now, Hello Houston with Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
Welcome back to the second hour.
Hello, Houston. Hello, Houston.
Day of the week?
It is gorgeous outside.
Beautiful day out there.
What's our day of the week?
Today is February 2nd,
Groundhog Day.
2026.
Did you ever get excited about Groundhog Day? Like, was there anything you paid attention to?
In school, in elementary school,
I was going to say, in
did,
school,
yeah.
everyone seemed to think it was something really important. Frank, do you know how that tradition started?
I blogged about it. You can Google search Frank Billingsley Groundhog Day.
Or you could tell us in a brief moment.
Oh, it just started.
It just started. Look it up. See the blog.
Bit
Frank
of a PR
already
stunt, but it works.
It's still, and people still do look at it. That was the big news on CNN this morning about that little groundhog.
Well, and it goes back to what was called Candlemas, and I mean there was some forecasting to what it was like in the first week of February. You could get an idea of what it might be like in the next 6 weeks, and so then they put the groundhog with it.
Oh, so there's
a poem and all kinds of stuff.
Ah,
yes.
The more you know. Doo-doo.
Ding, ding, ding. So I'll tell you this. It's interesting YouTube comments from the whole Don Lemon thing.
Yeah, in the first hour we were talking about Don Lemon arrest for the protest in the church in Minnesota.
Yes, we were discussing how... everything that happened in Minnesota and the Don Lemon being arrested.
And the pastor has a side job working for ICE.
Yes, and so we received a lot of YouTube comments. Jules Med said, the fact that we're questioning why a reporter is covering a news relevant story that just happens to involve a pastor and his church pretty much sums up why we are slipping toward fascism. Another dark one, Joy says, if the protest is illegal and Lemon had prior knowledge, then he is guilty of a crime. Jules then said, we send reporters to war zones into the middle of hurricanes. Why is that churches are suddenly off limits?
That's a good point, Ernie. Why are churches off limits?
I don't know.
Nicole Joe says, I'm not very upset about protesters going into a church. ICE has gone into and arrested people from other important sacred places, which I think is way more reprehensible.
I thought that was an interesting comment. I hadn't thought about it in those terms.
And then my British computer guy says, First Amendment rights do not protect entering private property to disrupt a religious service where others are exercising their right to freedom of religion. Drops mic and exits stage right. We received a text. This is Jen in Clear Lake. Why is this about nitpicking Don Lemon rather than the ICE agents who have a history of illegal behavior? And then we received another email. If Don Lemon had been replaced by a Fox News reporter at the protest, there would have been no arrest, only praise for the journalist who daringly interrupted the Antifa protest. It is all a matter of pleasing the convicted felon in the Oval Office. And that was from Maryland.
A lot of interesting thoughts on that.
A lot of interesting thoughts on it. I continue to a lot of interesting thoughts.
Is that all you're going to say on that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that there's multiple stories at play here. And I think the issue that is at hand that we're discussing is not what the protest was about, the ICE agent, minister, whatever that connection is. It's how protests are happening in today's day and age, where they happen, how different parts of the political spectrum view it so differently, and how when things are allowed and when they aren't. And then the whole idea of the attack, quote unquote, on a journalist. You know, where are we going with our freedom of reporting, of journalism, just basically? And is this encroaching on that, or is it saying, because of where they went and how it was planned and what happened, is that also at play?
Well, and then really, we've talked about this protest going on in this church. Mm-hmm. Was this protest all about protesting the pastor being a part of ICE? What do we know about this protest?
Yeah, that the behavior of ICE in Minnesota, the people protesting.
But you don't just show up in a church and protest behavior of ICE.
Right, but when you find a hook, a connection, which is, oh my, in our community we have a minister who is there and he is also working for ICE, that is a trigger point for a protest.
So that's the reason the protest was
at that church.
Well,
yes.
Then that kind of makes more sense that, he's the one they're protesting.
He became the symbol of something they were protesting.
So going into
against
his church, where you can look at him in the eye and say, we disagree with what you're doing, that seems like the place to do it, as opposed to outside the church, where he stays inside and you stay outside.
Right. And when I look at this, I'm looking at this headline simply at Don Lemon is a journalist, and he decided to go with this group of people into a church. Do I think that pastors should be also ICE agents or leading ICE initiatives? That's a problem. That's problematic, right? We need to we can dissect that within itself. What I am looking at strictly is Don Lemon as a journalist going with protesters into a church. Was he covering it? I think that even as a journalist, you can make sound decisions and give the entire story without having to be so disruptive. I'm also not thinking about anybody else than simply families that were going to church that Sunday and were just at church with their children, and protesters entered their place of worship to yell and scream and protest. Regardless of the reason, they could have every right to be yelling and screaming and everything. But I'm thinking that Sunday morning, there were families with their children sitting just ready to go to church, and they were probably, faced with this situation.
Well, that's the world we live in now. And
well,
especially if you're in Minneapolis.
That's a really scary world.
Especially
that you
Minneapolis
can't go to church
is a very scary
without
world.
having to be interrupted by protesters.
Yeah. Well, look at what has happened in Minneapolis in the last 2 weeks.
It's horrific.
It's
However, we are really questioning the lines of just where are lines?
There aren't any.
Well, and part of what is at play here is what's called the FACE Act. And we haven't really talked about that. It's the freedom of access to clinic entrances. but it plays a part in this because if I'll read this for you. It's a federal law prohibiting the use of force, threat of force, or physical obstruction to injure, intimidate, or interfere with anyone obtaining or providing reproductive health services or exercising religious freedom at a place of worship. Violation can result in significant fines and prison sentences. So there is a statute, the FACE Act it's called, and so that's part of what they're looking at. They're saying, okay, you don't have a right to go into these places. So that's part of it, should the protesters have been there. And the second part, as Celeste is talking about too, is the fact, where was Don Lemon's part in all of this? Now, we have often embedded journalists in groups, organizations to get an inside story for a journalistic point of view. So a reporter, for me, being in with a group of protesters to cover it is not a problem for me either. If you're embedded with a group of protesters and that protesting group goes into the church and you're there covering what's happening, you go with them as a journalistic point of view. My issue, my concern is how coordinated and thought out ahead of time was this. Was he part of the organization of it, or was he simply a journalist covering it?
And, the fact of the matter is, what we do know is that there are journalists, local journalists in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, that are every single day there covering it, talking to people every single day, that you're not seeing them on national news, but they are telling the story and they are seeking truth and they are trying to provide people with information. And you can go to Minnesota Public Radio and you can go find local journalists. And to me, Don Lemon as a journalist doing that and going was very performative.
And I also want to say, though, the local journalist, Georgia Fort, was also arrested. And she is the one that is a voice of their community.
Within their community. Yeah. And again, 713-440-8870. There is a lot to discuss today, and we're going to jump into this hour's
we're going to finish up last hour
headline
now and move forward.
And we're coming a little bit closer to home. Texas A&M University announced Friday that it is eliminating its women's and gender studies degree program. University leaders made the announcement alongside the results of a campus-wide course review launched after a video of a student confronting a professor over gender identity content went viral last fall and sparked political backlash. Interim President Tommy Williams made the decision because of low enrollment and cost. College of Arts and Sciences Interim Dean Simon North and Senior Executive Associate Cynthia Werner said in an email to faculty obtained by the Texas Tribune. Texas A&M offered a Bachelor of Arts degree, a Bachelor of Science degree, an undergraduate minor, and a graduate certificate in women's gender studies. The program has 25 students seeking a major and 31 seeking a minor. Students already enrolled will be allowed to complete their programs over the next 6 semesters, but no new students will be accepted. What are your thoughts on A&M limiting women's studies? Give us a call or send us a text, 713-440-8870.
I guess my question in this, and I need to look further, is they're eliminating the Women and Gender Study degree program. And then your question is A&M eliminating women's studies? I don't know. Are they still going to have the content available, just not in a degreed program, or are they removing all of the coursework?
Well, from what I understand, the coursework was being taught by professors that have other classes in different subjects, so sort of interdisciplinary. So my guess is they're going to do away with those. They've already done away with LGBTQI studies. They got rid of those. So I think they're going to get rid of these. I don't think they've ever promoted themselves as a liberal arts college. But doesn't vote as a liberal arts degree. People who go for a liberal arts education should have access to every kind of degree there is out there, and then make their choice as to what they want to pursue.
Mm-hmm. And to that point, I think that all this will do at the end of the day for Texas A&M is narrow their course schedules, and it will narrow people essentially that are interested in having more diverse coursework, and they will simply go somewhere else. Yeah. So at the end of the day, if A&M University wants to take that type of stance, they have every right to, but then students also have every right to go somewhere else.
Yeah, that's hard, though. If you want to be an Aggie, your dad was an Aggie, you've always dreamed of being an Aggie, and now because of this political atmosphere where you can't teach certain things, kind of
it'll be
throws
interesting
a wrench in it.
To see if, in what we will have different policies going forward when we have another different administration come in, and we'll see if Texas A&M will all of a sudden reinstate all of these
We're going to live
classes.
in this whiplash society.
Wow.
You know,
Pretty much.
oh, wait, now we can be doing that. Oh, now we can be doing, now we can't. Now we can.
I want to grab a call that came up before I do the one thing that it bothers me today that we always question everything we're told. And interim president, as you said, Williams made the decision because of low enrollment and cost. Do we know that's true? Or, I mean, like, see, shouldn't we be able to believe in the facts that are supposed to come out of organizations anymore?
25 undergrads, I think 31 in postgrad. So that 50-something people were being affected.
713-440-8870. Marie from Cyprus is on the line. Marie, what's on your mind?
Thank you so much for having this debate. I am a teacher. I teach at an international school. After COVID, we had students going online. So I kind of do that. But I've been teaching in HISD, and although I live in Cyprus, I'm kind of a downtowner. I kind of consider myself like a downtowner type person. Nevertheless, I just want to say I do disagree with this. We need women's studies. Everyone knows that. I don't think it's just a liberal arts thing. I think it's just kind of like a smart thing. We should study all people, all cultures, all genders, just to have more of an open-minded perspective, right? Don't we want people to be of all like majors just to kind of have some insight into like women's studies and just to learn more about it? They don't have to agree with it, but just learn about it, and then you can draw your own conclusions from there. Yeah. But if you just take away something, what kind of message does that send? Like, we don't want people to study this. What are we hiding? You know what I mean? It just sends the wrong message.
Right. But if
I think they should keep it going.
If you take the president of the university, the interim president, at his word, and he saw low enrollment and it didn't work out with the cost of what it was to teach it, do they have the right to rearrange their schedules to make sure that they are staying in the black?
No.
Okay.
Think about it. You have all kinds of people. A&M is one of those schools that when you think of like A&M, UT. I'm keeping this short. When I was like a freshman in college, I had this best friend I met, Monica Michon, and she went to A&M, and I went to like U of H downtown. We just came from two different worlds, right? And she was open-minded. I'm African American. She was white, but we ended up at Bennigan's Tavern working as waitresses. Learning about each other. We fell madly in love with each other and became best friends. Mm-hmm. She passed away, unfortunately. But we came from these two different worlds, and we became best friends. Yep. And, it's just important to have open minds and to study all kinds of things.
Marie, thank you very much for your thoughts and your story, and sorry for the loss of your friend. If you have something you want to contribute to this conversation, give us a call, 713-440-8870.
And I think that, to Marie's point, is exactly that. If there are going to be other universities that are going to provide these classes and opportunities in the state of Texas. You don't even have to leave the state. And if Texas A&M wants to take that stance, then it's an unfortunate one, and it is one that they will then have to.
There's also an old expression, this could be the tip of the iceberg.
Chef Rob writes over on YouTube, if no one attends classes, there's no revenue. Universities are businesses. Profits mean more than social stances. Do not be fooled. He goes on to say, why waste your tuition money for useless classes that won't benefit your career?
Well, if this were a thing across the country where universities were saying, you know what, nobody goes to these classes. They cost us a lot of money for nothing. Let's shut them down. If this was the thing, that would be different. This is one school taking this stance. So that's why I don't believe them.
Talking about people not attending things, there's a new documentary out about the First Lady, Melania Trump, which opened this weekend to about $7 million in ticket sales, which is actually a strong start for a documentary, and the biggest non-music doc debut in over a decade. So it did turn some tickets, but this is where it gets interesting. The film is far from a financial win for Amazon MGM Studios, which spent roughly $40 million to acquire the rights and another $35 million on promotion, making it one of the most expensive documentaries ever. I do believe the only one more was This Is It. Michael Jackson was more expensive. Directed by Brett Ratner and released in more than 17,000 theaters, the movie offers a behind-the-scenes look at Melania Trump in the days before her husband's second inauguration. Despite exceeding expectations at the box office, it still faces challenges at recouping its large investment. So what are your thoughts? Did you see it? Are you going to go see Melania? 713-440-8870. Thoughts?
Oh, well, did you know how much Melania got out of this?
$27 million,
yes.
I think they say was her take.
Yes, that's her take. And
Yeah.
so these Amazon
That's
MGM,
what's reported.
That's what I read. MGM puts all this money out, and where does it go? Into her pocket. So, but
no comment.
I know it's her world, not mine.
You know what? I will tell you this though. I am curious to see it. I'm curious to see what it is. So it's more like
once it starts streaming on Netflix, you'll watch it.
Yeah, I want to see what it is. I'm kind of fascinated to see what is the story that she felt she needed to tell.
Well, the critics say there's no story there.
Yeah, that's what they do say.
What they're saying.
So behind the scenes, there's nothing behind the scenes.
She not only was the subject of the documentary, she had editorial control over it. She was the final voice on what we saw. So that also fascinates me.
She probably has a better story about how she came to America and all of her life here before she met Donald Trump and what it was like for her and her parents. And
Does she talk about Christmas at all and give her thoughts about Christmas?
No, I don't think she talks.
not
Which
big
is
on
interesting because
Christmas,
it
is she?
happens over that period of time because it leads up to it's the 20 days before the inauguration.
Right. She should have done the 20 years before the inauguration.
Right. What I hear is it's a lot of walking alone and a lot of reflecting on her clothing. And that what seems to be her one critique to the designers is tighter.
Well,
That's what I've heard.
She always looks fabulous.
Well, that sounds
I'll give her
about
that.
right.
Yeah.
I would think that's about as much going on in Melania Trump. Walking alone.
Yeah.
And thinking about her clothes.
Yeah. Somebody says, Chef Rob again, he's here. $75 million cost, $7 million in earnings. Ouch. I guess they'll make their money by declaring bankruptcy, par for the course. Very funny. I think that there is a great documentary there, Frank, and I think I'm just waiting for someone to make it.
This is not it, is what you're saying.
I don't think so. I mean, I think it is what it is, and I think we have to accept that's what it is. It does seem, though, a bit interesting how it was I don't know if finagle's the right word, but there are a lot of these streaming services paying huge amounts of money to get what they think either positions them in the right place or buddies them up to the right people.
Ernie, you really think that there's a good documentary there behind Melania Trump?
Absolutely. I don't think we know an iota of what's really going on. Well, I think we assume a lot. I would love a real...
That's the documentary you're not going to get.
No,
anyway.
We'll never see that story.
No.
See, I think that's assuming that she cares about things.
But
like
see,
bullying online. Wasn't that her platform?
I think it'd be fascinating to see a documentary that talks about if she doesn't care about things. How can you be in this position? What motivates her? What moves her? Is it... I don't even want to say because I don't want to be called into court, but there are things that I wonder what makes it work.
Well, you may not find out.
I may not. I may never know. It may be the enigma of our time. But anyway.
I have lots of thoughts, but we're going to move on
to
Frank, the next headline.
What have you got for us?
It's getting harder to afford to live in Texas. Does that surprise anyone here?
No.
State's median household income for the 5-year period ending in 2024 was about $78,500. That is behind the U.S. median of $81,000. Meanwhile, housing costs have gone up faster than wages have gone up. So it's leaving more Texans, especially renters, spending a larger share of their pay on rent and home-related expenses more than before the pandemic, despite longstanding perceptions of affordability. And that has been a long time perception about Houston, that it's a lot cheaper to live here than other large cities. The trend suggests that simply isn't so. So what do you think?
Interesting. 713-440-8870.
Yeah, I I will tell you, I got a notice this weekend that I was seriously overdrawn in my checking account. And that made me stop and think that, wow, I don't know that I was more extravagant in my spending over the holidays, but things did cost more. Things were more expensive. And so, I think a lot of people are feeling that. And of course, you're going to feel it in home costs and in income and all of this.
Well, I lived on fast food, so to speak, between shows, between the 6 p.m. and the 10 p.m. for 40 years.
Yeah.
So we would try to find somewhere we could eat for about $30, $35.
Mm-hmm.
And those same places are 60 now.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And it hasn't been that long since I retired, by the way.
I don't think you have retired. You're here every day, Frank.
Oh, well, there's that. So, yeah, anyway, it's pricey. You going to the Super Bowl? You going to watch the Super Bowl?
I'm going to watch
Are
the Super Bowl.
going to the?
Yeah.
I think if she were going, we'd have heard about it.
I don't know. Celeste is pretty well fixed out there.
Yeah, she plays things close to the.
I do. I keep my cards close.
Yeah, I hear that's happening.
I enjoy the Super Bowl.
The commercials or the bowl?
I like both.
Yeah.
I really do. I love watching the halftime show. I feel like it's my. I grew up with my dad being a Dallas Cowboys fan. We watched. I know they're not playing.
And Bad Bunny.
Bad Bunny.
I mean, what about him?
He just
at
won
the
a
Grammys?
Grammy?
And he won the Grammy. He won Best Album of the Year.
Yep.
And it was all in Spanish, the first time that they've ever had that.
Yeah.
And he was emotional. He gave this amazing speech that we're all Americans.
And he won it at the Grammys and not like at the Latin Grammys.
Yeah. I think it's really
Very mainstream.
fascinating. If you are him, the zeitgeist of it all coming together in a moment. From Saturday Night Live to then winning the Grammy to then the Super Bowl show, like these things that are usually paced out throughout a career, he's getting all in a couple-month period because he has really climbed this mountain of entertainment. He's on the precipice of, global domination.
Well, he's certainly someone to be respected and admired. And I think that this whole brouhaha about the halftime show at the Super Bowl is going to be really interesting to watch. Probably one of the highlights of the Super Bowl for me.
Even if it's just my family watching, I like to make the snacks. We have the treats. I enjoy it.
You could invite colleagues
something about
over.
it. I could.
Yeah.
She could.
But you know what I could do?
What could you do?
Take us into the next segment. Coming up on Hello Houston, Julianna Washburn, News 88.7's Galveston County reporter, will tell us about the rescue of 100 sea turtles in Galveston. This is News 88.7. Stay with us.
It's not just your car. It's the one that brought your kids home from school, took you cross-country, held memories, laughter, even a few breakdowns. When it's time to let go, give your car a new purpose. Donate it and turn memories into meaningful support for this station. Plus, you'll enjoy free and easy pickup, potential tax benefits, and a simple donation process. Your gift supports the programs you and your family love. Donate today and help keep public media strong. Call or donate online.
Have limited or no access to reliable local news. More than half of the country's major daily newspapers are now owned by just a handful of parent companies. What does it all mean for how news gets made and who gets heard and who's trying to chart a new path forward? Our series, If You Can Keep It, returns next time on 1A.
It's coming up today at 2 o'clock.
Houston Matters highlights the people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston. And we do it live on the air weekday mornings at 9 on News 88.7. But we know you're not always available then to listen. So subscribe to our podcast wherever you get yours, or find each day's program to stream online at your leisure at houstonpublicmedia.org. And reach out with questions or comments anytime. Email us at talk@houstonmatters.org.
I want to make a movie about this.
The Arts Hour brings you film.
The themes in it are so far ahead of their time.
Books.
The detail is amazing.
Art.
There's all the personal stuff.
Theatre.
Lots of singing and dancing and colours.
Music.
The dance floor is made for dancing.
And everything in between.
I want it to be exciting.
That's the Arts Hour with me, Nikki Beatty.
I really identified with it.
From the BBC.
The Arts Hour, Friday nights at 9 on News 88.7.
And now back to Hello Houston. Join the conversation. Call now, 713-440-8870, or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Ernie Manus, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
I love this next story. More than 100 rescued sea turtles are back in the Gulf after a dramatic recovery effort following last week's winter storm. Cold temperatures left many turtles stunned and in danger. They get some kind of paralysis. They prompted volunteers to help them along the upper Texas coast. They step in. I don't know if they clean them off. I don't know what all they do to them, but they get them ready to go back in the ocean. So joining us now is Julianna Washburn. She's News 88.7's Galveston County reporter, and you reported on the rescue and witnessed this what became an emotional release along the Galveston shore. Julianna, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thank you so much.
So tell us, first of all, I guess explain what happens to these turtles at certain temperatures, and then what do you do to help them?
Okay, so basically what happens is when water temperatures drop below 50 degrees, turtles, it's kind of like turtles sense I need to go inside, like we need to go inside when it's cold. And so they try to make their way to Gulf waters. They're usually in bay waters. It gets colder much faster. It's shallower. And so they're trying to get out of the bay and get to the Gulf where it's warmer. But a lot of times they can get stuck in marsh or just trying to get out. They get cold stunned, which means they're kind of paralyzed. They go into a coma-like state and they just float, and that makes them really susceptible to predators or boats, anything that could harm them. And so what volunteers do with the Gulf Center for Sea Turtle Research is they go out, they pick up the turtles, they bring them in their car and bring them to the Sea Turtle Hospital in Galveston. And they warm them up slowly, very slowly. They don't have the heat on in the car. They make sure to bring them back. They have blankets on them, and they slowly warm them up until they're ready to go into the Gulf in warmer waters. And so that's why they released them back once there was some warmer weather. It was a good day, a clear day to bring them back, and the NOAA told them it was a good day to do it, so that's why they did it that day. And those waters were warmer, so they would be safe there.
So I'm just curious, Julianna, when we look at cold-blooded animals, do all cold-blooded animals get cold stunning, or is that only for this type of turtle?
I'm not sure. I mean, when they mention the sea turtles, they say, they're cold-blooded. That's why they can't regulate their temperature.
Okay.
So I'm sure others experience this too, but they...
I can tell you iguanas in South Florida that are in the trees. When it hits 50 degrees, they become paralyzed and they fall. I mean,
Right, they fall.
That's so sad.
It's called raining iguanas.
Yeah, they can't regulate their body temperatures. I was thinking about that. I was actually at Moody Gardens this weekend, and I was looking at the penguins in the aquarium, and they're in such cold water and everything, but they can regulate their temperature, whereas the sea turtles are they need a little helping hand because they just get too cold. Yeah.
And so you went out there, and what did you find just absolutely incredible about being out there? Because the videos and the footage, anybody could have been there.
Yeah, it was so cool. Everyone was invited. They announced it that morning. And so, seriously, people flocked to the beach. I saw students from the medical school, families, kids, and it was in the middle of the day. I mean, in the middle of a work day, and everyone was there. They said they had over 400 people.
Wow.
So we were all lined up behind these kind of ropes, and they actually carried each turtle into the ocean one by one. So it was like they had a runway to go down.
Of them.
Over 100. It was 102 exactly. So
Okay, so 102 went through this process.
Yes.
Do we have any idea, were there a lot left behind? Or I hate to make it look so
Wow.
ugly or sad, but like,
Merry Christmas,
how
Ernie.
successful were they in helping this group?
They were pretty successful. There was about 150 in total that they rescued, and some of those didn't make it, and some maybe weren't ready. So getting 102 back into the ocean just a couple days later, pretty successful, but still sad to think about, how much this affects the turtles, something like just colder temperatures.
Well, and then it froze again,
Yeah.
but you were saying that by now they're okay because they're in the ocean part?
Yes, and they constantly monitor water temperatures, so they would have gone out on another big rescue if there was a big risk. They didn't expect water temperatures to drop nearly as low as they did that weekend, but all those turtles that were rescued were in the Gulf waters, so they should be good and safe.
And it's interesting, you're saying they. So who is behind all of this effort, and how often are they doing these type of rescues?
That's a good question. The Gulf Center for Sea Turtle Research, they're at the A&M campus in Galveston. They lead all of these rescues. They're the permitted organization to do it along the Texas coast. So anytime they perceive a threat with, ocean waters getting colder, they have people, like I said, constantly monitoring it. They go out and they had 200 crew members do this. So they're prepared all of the time. They're, and even when they're not doing cold stunning rescues, they're rescuing sea turtles from fishing lines or plastic, anything like that. They always post on their Facebook, and you get to see them, it's really sad to see turtles with something around their neck, but they're always rescuing.
And so this is done by professionals. This
Yes.
isn't necessarily a group of people that said, we're going to come together.
Yes, it's professionals, researchers, and then they have trained volunteers. So the crew members were mostly volunteers, but they have to go through training.
I saw the video, and they're taking him in the water, and I had to start thinking to myself, well, I know about snapping turtles. Do these turtles fight back, or are they just so happy to be warm and have been cared for that they're letting them be carried?
They were all one breed of turtle. They were green sea turtles, and there were no issues with snapping then. They were definitely excited to get in the water. They were like flapping. And the last turtle, there's a video of this on the Houston Public Media Instagram. The last turtle was so huge, and they were trying to carry it back into the ocean. It was slipping out of their hands because it was so excited. So that was the only issue they had. There was no
Snap,
anger.
bite. They were just like...
They seemed excited. I know, that's me inferring it, but they seemed excited.
Well, that's kind of like the way I am about Mardi Gras.
Right. Me too.
And Mardi Gras starts this weekend.
Yes, it does.
What's Gambrinus is the big parade.
Oh, yeah. See, no, I haven't been to Mardi Gras yet in Galveston. I know, it's a crime.
Well, you have a big
you're
couple
going to be
of weeks.
reporting on it.
I will
you're
be.
going to get to see all of that very soon.
Yes.
What can you tell us about what's coming up?
So it starts on Friday, and that's when I'm going to just be all across the board covering it as much as I can. And it's going to last until February 17th, so about a week and a half, almost 2 weeks. And there's going to be over 20 parades, over 20 performances, and a ton of beads. So it's
literally.
I
think the Funky Uptown Umbrella Brigade is Friday.
Okay.
Gambrinus is on Saturday. That's the big one. Then the next Saturday is Momus,
Yes.
which is the bigger one.
Yes.
And then there are lots of parades, as you say, in between. It's funny because the actual Mardi Gras is the 17th.
Right.
And we do a little bit on the actual Mardi Gras, but it's mostly the 2 weekends before that everybody goes crazy.
I know. People have already, if you drive downtown Galveston, people's houses are decked out in Mardi Gras. Like decorations, they are just, people are ready. Everyone's talking about it. I'm really excited. I mean, people are coming in. I'm sure Airbnbs are going to be booked out.
Yeah, I'm curious about the city preparing for this influx of people, traffic-wise and all of that. Do you have any insight into what they're doing to make it more user-friendly?
Yes, the city came out with all the information you need today, that with parking, road closures. I know one thing I noticed, they said if you're in Galveston, there's only a couple of main roads. There's the Seawall, Broadway, and Harborside. And they're saying Harborside is probably the best route to go because parades are going to be going down the Seawall and downtown. So if you're in Galveston, you know that, and just kind of stick over to Harborside because you'll probably get
Everybody knows that trick, I hate to tell you.
Yeah, I'd use that trick every day, especially summer.
Yes, absolutely. So what other news? The Alyssa is going to be moving to New York City. What do you know about that?
Yeah, there's lots of stuff in Galveston.
Not moving, going to visit. Don't scare people.
Yeah, the
It'll
Alyssa.
come back. It'll come back.
It's like a floating museum in Galveston. I mean, it's so cool that the island has that. It's an 1877 tall ship, and it's really cool that it's in Galveston, but now it's going to go on a voyage to New York City for the 4th of July, and it's going to make a couple of stops in Florida, I think in one of the Carolinas, and people are going to get to visit the boat, and it's a huge marketing opportunity for Galveston. So City Council just approved that trip, and they're going to be gone for a couple of months, so...
Well, it's not exactly like they have lie flats in first class. Let me tell you, I've been on that boat.
Have you?
The men and women that are going to sail it, my heart goes out to you.
They do it the old-fashioned way.
My hat goes off to you, I should say.
Yeah, they have, if you walk into like where they control, that they navigate, it's no GPS, it's a map. Like they do it all the old-fashioned way. It's really cool.
We've been talking on the show today a bit about protests and what have been going on. It's occupied a lot of the show today, so I'm curious from what was going on in Galveston this weekend, what did you see when it came to ICE protests? protests?
It was super interesting because just recently there was a protest in Galveston, but it was about 6 to 8 people participating. Yesterday it was over 500, and that was just the first count. So that's big in Galveston. I mean, it's a lot of people showing up in one space, and they were marching down the seawall. They had police helping them out, the organizers out. They said they had a great working relationship with Galveston police to they were able to cross the street, walk along the seawall, make circles around, and the mood was very high. They had music playing throughout the whole 2 hours. I mean, there were a lot of people coming in and out. So,
but everyone respectful, and it
Yes.
was no issues that you saw.
No, I asked about that because I was interested. Were you guys nervous about anything, preparing for anything? And they said they trusted the police there so much that they felt really good about it. So. Yeah.
Julianna Washburn is News 88.7's Galveston County reporter. Julianna, thanks for joining us today on Hello Houston.
Thank you guys for having me.
Happy
It's
Mardi
so
Gras.
fun. Yes, I'll see you guys at Mardi Gras.
You can find more of Julianna's reporting at houstonpublicmedia.org. She's going to keep us informed with all the fun that's coming up. But coming up, we're going to discuss American Heart Month. Stay with us as Hello Houston continues.
Metro is introducing a brand new fare system to the Houston region. Say hello to the Ride Metro Fare Card. It's the new way to ride. The Ride Metro fare system will replace the old Metro Q fare card and will make buying your bus and train fares easier than ever before. You'll be able to buy Ride Metro cards at all Metro ride stores, ticket vending machines, order online, and from a growing network of retailers throughout the region. When it comes to moving about Houston, we want you to choose Metro. Visit ridemetro.org/fare system.
Federal system of checks and balances has become unbalanced.
Through gerrymandering, through campaign finance, through some of the voting rights decisions, Congress no longer has the ability to respond as directly to the people. And because of that, the court has taken away what is probably Congress's most important basis of authority.
What Congress can do about that, that's next time on Think.
Listen tonight at 10.
Syria's Jewish population is weighing whether to return after the new government announced that it was returning their property. Some families yearning to reconnect with the land and its history are optimistic.
Planning on making a trip with all my friends soon. Having them see all their roots, like where their grandparents, their parents grew up.
I'm Elsa Chang, returning home to a new Syria on All Things Considered from NPR News.
It starts this afternoon at 3 o'clock.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from Metro, introducing the Ride Metro Fare Card. The Ride Metro fare system replaces the Metro Q fare card for bus and rail fares. Details at ridemetro.org/fare system. Support for Houston Public Media comes from Baylor College of Medicine. With 125 years of innovation behind it, Baylor has driven progress in health and medicine through research, education, and care that push the frontiers of modern science.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Ernie Manous, Celestia Sherman, and Frank Billingsley.
As we enter February, you may not be aware that this month is also American Heart Month, a national observance to raise awareness about cardiovascular disease, which is the leading cause of death in the U.S. First proclaimed by President Lyndon B. Johnson in 1964, American Heart Month is also dedicated to promoting healthy habits and lifestyle choices, while also encouraging people to learn CPR so they can act as a first responder in the event of a cardiac emergency. And to tell us more about heart health and how we can prevent cardiovascular disease, we welcome Dr. Wahaj Aman, an interventional cardiologist at Memorial Hermann. Dr. Aman, welcome back to Hello Houston.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So February, we think of love and we think of hearts.
Well, there it all goes together, doesn't it?
Yes, but we should also be thinking about our health and our heart. Talk to us about why this month is so important.
So February heralds Heart Month, as you said, and this is a really good opportunity for all people in the medical field, but particularly for cardiologists who are passionate about heart health, to talk about what does it constitute, how can we improve our heart health, and how can we prevent heart disease.
It's interesting. We talk a lot about heart health here and stuff. And one thing that came up that we don't focus enough on is women's heart health. And I'm curious, are you still seeing that there's a difference there in the attention it's given?
Big time. And to this day, it's unfortunate because we're in 2026, but a large majority of women who come to our emergency rooms, to our clinics, and they say that something doesn't feel right, the medical community and in general, they've been sort of guilty of this, where they haven't been taking them as seriously as they should. Women obviously present a little bit different than men, whereas it's not very classic that they have this sort of burning chest pain, chest heaviness. Sometimes it's just fatigue, sometimes it's just nausea. And so we really have to be a bit more cognizant when it comes to women's heart health.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned that. I have a friend who had a heart attack, and his only symptom was that he was sweating crazy. Like he couldn't figure out why. He was sweating so much that it was, of course, a woman who said, you need to go to the ER.
Yep.
Behind every man's heart attack, there's a woman who knows what she's doing. So go over a little bit of maybe some unusual symptoms, because we all hear about the left arm starts to hurt.
Yeah.
You hear about that, but you don't hear about things like just a mass sweat.
Right. No, absolutely. And so, like you said, the sort of classic Hollywood heart attack is this chest tightness, pressure that's radiating to your left arm. You clutch it, and then shortly after you get a heart attack. But in the real world, how I explain to patients, basically any kind of chest discomfort, heaviness, tightness, pressure, or anything that doesn't just feel right in the chest, that's obviously the first thing. Then it is about if you're having difficulty breathing. Right. So if you're not able to finish a sentence without, sort of stopping and taking your breath in, that's a big one. Nausea, like I mentioned, sweating, like you mentioned. And then there's a lot of sort of this pain that's not sort of quite in the chest, but a little bit lower down into your sort of upper belly. A lot of the times people present that way. A lot of the times people present with just fatigue. And so they were able to do a lot before, and for some reason they're just not able to achieve what they want to achieve in their life in terms of exercise or and such. So that's a big one too that we need to take seriously.
But when you say that, so many of the things you're listing here are a lot of things a lot of people experience all the time. How do you know when it is of a level of seriousness and when it's just you're fatigued, you're out of shape, you're not? How do you know when it crosses that line?
The two things I look at is frequency and severity. So if this is something where the length of your symptoms are 20, 30 minutes, this is not something that you just want to ignore. Similarly, if you are having fatigue, if it's sort of this intense fatigue where you're just not able to get out of bed, you're just not able to walk around, that's something to take seriously. Obviously, in our day-to-day life, all of us feel fatigued. We're,
so debilitating fatigue is what you're
debilitating fatigue. That's correct. That's the right word, debilitating.
Let me ask you about other pills that we take that we may not be aware can cause heart problems. I read an article just today, melatonin, long use melatonin might create a heart risk, which is something that people take a lot of. First of all, is that true? Have you heard about that? And secondly, are there just pills that we kind of take over the counter or from GNC or just of what we think is a healthy way to go about life that in fact causes problems?
About melatonin, it's a great thing that you mentioned. So it makes for a great headline that melatonin caused heart failure. The truth is somewhere in the middle. People who oftentimes do take melatonin have other comorbidities, a large one of them being sleep apnea. And so sleep apnea is something that is independently linked to a higher rate of stroke, a higher rate of heart attacks, and heart failure. I don't quite think melatonin itself is causing the heart failure, but it is if you look at the population that's taking it. So that's part one. Part two is about the supplement. The supplement industry, while very, very alluring and sort of well-financed, does not have a lot of research to back it up. And so oftentimes we will see patients who come to the clinic with a big laundry list of these supplements, not knowing that they have interactions with some of their blood pressure medicines or some of their blood thinners. And so this is one of those things that we have to be very cognizant of. I would say before taking any supplement, please make sure that there is some research behind it, that there are, and if you're not sure, ask your doctor.
I just heard about, speaking of melatonin, then we can move on, that I guess my mom takes 10 milligrams or something of melatonin each day. And her doctor said to her, the increase in amount means nothing in melatonin. She could go down to 1 milligram, that we get in this idea that if you've been on it a while, you need more to continue the impact. But actually with melatonin, it has no more effect from a minor amount to a massive amount. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I think after a certain dosage, basically you're just treating yourself rather than treating anything else. It really doesn't make a huge difference. I concur with that opinion. Yeah,
I've heard a few things about ivermectin. Ivermectin now, the state just passed, you can get it right over the counter. And people seem to be taking ivermectin for all kinds of things.
Everything.
Does it have any effect on heart health?
The short answer is no.
Okay.
But we, within the space of cardiology, we always want to leave room by saying maybe there is some clinical trial down the line that proves us, differently. But as of right now, there is no good clinical trial that would sort of say that ivermectin has heart benefits.
Okay, what about GLP-1s? And then that was my last one. GLP-1s, and all the weight loss drugs, because if you lose weight too quickly, I mean, we know from anorexia that that can really put a strain on your heart. So, advice there.
Yes. No. So, GLP-1 does have some good data related to specifically a certain kind of heart failure, seen more in people who have obesity. And they actually had better outcomes. So GLP-1 under the care of a doctor, not very high dosages, is actually a good thing. Okay. And so for heart perspective, I think it's a good thing to take if obviously you qualify for it from a diabetes perspective, from a weight perspective, from a sleep apnea perspective.
We are speaking with Memorial Hermann interventional cardiologist Dr. Wahaj Aman about American Heart Month. You can join the conversation at 713-440-8870. We have a call from Chris from Cyprus. Chris, welcome to Hello Houston. What is your comment or question for Dr. Aman?
Hi. I had a triple bypass in 2020. 0 symptoms. I basically had a fainting spell. And my wife said, hey, something's wrong. You don't faint. I had been training and I participate and I do Spartan races. I had been doing them for like 8 or 9 years. And I'm not overweight, not a drinker, not a smoker. And she just, rode me until I actually went and got a stress test. I had 100%, 70%, and 50% blockage. And like I said, 0 symptoms. So if someone has a strong family, get checked out and just really, don't take any chances.
What a great point, Chris.
Yeah. Dr. Aman, and that was kind of what I've been curious about. We're talking about when you're already at the place where you have the symptoms, where you have somebody like Chris who says, hey, I'm pretty healthy. And all of a sudden I was going through this and my wife was like, you need to go to the emergency room, or like Frank mentioned, his friend who was just sweating. Prevention often is key. Can you talk to us about what people can be doing to make sure that they don't find themselves in this situation?
It all starts with having a good look at your life and what kind of risk factors you have and what are you at risk for. For example, if you have blood pressure that's a little bit on the higher side, if you are sort of pre-diabetic, and the last time if you have had your cholesterol checked was a decade ago, it's probably time to update that. And so it always starts with your vitals and your recent blood tests. And sort of 95% of my referrals come that way. Then when they have a little bit of a higher cholesterol plus maybe some family history, we need to sort of talk to them about their risk of having a heart attack. These days we have these scans called calcium score. They're basically when cholesterol hardens, it becomes calcium in our blood vessels. And so we have a scan that looks for this plaque and says it gives you a score. Anything above 0 means you have plaque. If you have plaque, then the conversation changes from, hey, we need to get your cholesterol down with diet and exercise to, hey, you have plaque. We really need to make sure this plaque does not become unstable and cause a heart attack down the line.
Mm-hmm. Dr. Wahaj Aman is an interventional cardiologist at Memorial Hermann. Dr. Aman, it's always great to have you on Hello Houston. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you. I feel like I could talk to you guys for hours about this.
We have so much more to chat about.
I wanted to know about red wine, but we're running out of time.
We'll bring you back again.
I do. Can I end on like a downer?
Yes.
Or no?
Go
Keep
for
your
it.
red wine. No, red wine used to have like a lot of. They would say they had a lot of antioxidant benefits and things of that nature. Latest data: alcohol of any kind, not the best thing for you.
You had to ask, Frank. Doctor, thank you very much. And a reminder to everyone, our doctors, our guests in medical segments can talk in generalities, but you should always check with your medical professional before you make any changes to your behaviors or protocols.
And that brings us to the end of our show. We want to thank you for watching and listening to Hello Houston. We will be back tomorrow with more conversations. Tomorrow, we're going to be speaking with Ebony Williams, who's running to be judge of Harris County Civil Court at Law Number 2. This is News 88.7. Have a great day.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menhevar, Jen Altai, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Houston Public Media, in partnership with Texas Southern University, brings to you The Vibe, R&B, hip-hop,
Houston,
and neo-soul.
say hello to the
Music
Ride
that
Metro
resonates
Fare
with
Card.
all
It's
ages.
the new way to
Vibe
ride.
on
The Ride
88.7
Metro Fare
HD3
System will replace the
and
old
on the
Metro
Houston
Q
Public
fare
Media
card
app.
and will
Well,
make
we've
buying your
warmed
bus
up
and train
to
fares
70
easier than
already.
ever
Our low
before.
tonight's gonna
Visit
be near
ridemetro.org
59. This is your
/fare system.
NPR station, KUHF, Houston, News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's 1 o'clock.
Funding for Here and Now comes from MathWorks, creator of Math